Have you ever noticed that moment when a younger woman's clearly interested in you, giving you all the signs, but there's a little voice in your head saying, she's probably just being friendly, or why would she be into somebody my age? So you play it cool, act professional, maybe even a little distant. And what happens? She starts finding more reasons to talk to you, going out of her way to get your attention. But then something shifts. Maybe she does something that makes her interest really obvious. And in that moment, when you finally let yourself believe that she's actually into you, you do the one thing that kills all the attraction she's been building up. And it all has to do with this word right here. And just like that, you've gone from being this mysterious, accomplished older man she was trying to figure out to just another guy who's way too eager to win her over. In this video, I'm going to show you the psychology behind why younger women are attracted to older men and how most men ruin it. 3 powerful tools for keeping her hooked and chasing your approval and your validation. The exact way to compliment her that makes her want to prove herself more to you, and how to use what I call slow validation to make her feel like she's winning you over. Hi, I'm Bobby Rio, and I've been coaching men for the past 15 years. And so many guys that I work with now are in their 40s, 50s, and even in their late 60s. And everything I'm going to discuss in this video comes from real world examples on a daily basis. I'm dealing with this exact situation. And you know, it's funny because a lot of guys assume that the only reason a younger woman would be interested into an older guy, and I know I'll see it in the comments, I see it all the time, is they think it's money. Everybody thinks the only reason a younger woman would want an older man is because of money. And yes, sure, there are some women out there who treat older guys like they're the ATM machine. But in most cases, her interest comes from something entirely different. She's drawn to very specific qualities that she expects older men to have, like your perceived worldliness, your experience, a masculinity that she doesn't get from guys her own age. And there's something also a little bit exciting, a little bit taboo about being with an older man. And that taboo, that sort of I'm not supposed to be doing this, feeds into a fantasy that many, many younger women have. And most importantly, she assumes your attention and your validation is going to be more of a challenge to win over, which is why it's so ironic that the moment most older guys realize that a younger woman is actually into them, they completely abandon that challenge that she was craving, and they start bombarding her with attention and validation, which is the exact opposite of what she was secretly hoping for. I see this happen all the time with my clients. Just recently, I was working with this surgeon named Mark, and Mark runs his own surgical practice. He's in his early 50s. He got divorced a few years back, and there's this nurse at his practice, Amy. She's 28, smart, attractive. So at first, Mark barely notices her beyond the usual, professional interactions. Now, obviously, he finds her attractive, but not in a way that you even consider it, right? Like to him, he really only looked at women in their mid-40s to late 40s, early 50s as potential options. But over time, he starts picking up on little things like how Amy always volunteers to assist his surgeries, how she finds reasons to stop at his office to check the schedule, the way she'd laugh just a bit too hard at his jokes, or how her eyes would linger at him during staff meetings. But Mark, like a lot of successful guys his age, kind of just brushes it off. He tells himself that she's probably like this with everyone, or she's just being professional, Even when she would stay late, supposedly catching up on paperwork, whenever he was working late, he'd always find a way to sort of dismiss it. And here's what's fascinating. His assumption that she wasn't interested actually made her more interested, because he wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't trying to win her over. He wasn't acting differently around her. He wasn't putting on that nice guy persona that so many guys put on the minute they're in like sort of pursuit mode with a woman. He was just being himself. And I talked about this recently in another video of mine, where it's really dangerous advice to say just be yourself, because most guys, when they're like asking for advice about a woman and you say, just be yourself, they go into that nice guy mode. But what I mentioned in that video is when you actually are just being yourself and you're just treating her like a human being and you're just acting like, you know, you're autonomous, sort of in your own world, doing your own thing, your own goals, and you are just acting from that place, it is very attractive to a woman. That's how he was. He was focused on himself. He was casual in interactions until one day, one of the other nurses pulls him aside and says to him, I think Amy's into you. She talks about you all the time. And just like that, everything changes. Not overnight, but you can feel the shift happening. Where before he barely noticed what she was wearing, now he's hyper aware of her presence. He's catching himself just checking her out whenever she walks by, really just in tune, paying extra attention to the tone of her voice when she's talking to him. Really just getting into that analyzation mode that a lot of us get into when we suspect something might be going on with a woman. So a few days after that conversation with the other nurse, Mark and Amy wind up grabbing lunch in the hospital cafeteria. And Mark's sitting there watching her, and she's talking animatedly about some patient, and his mind starts racing. And we've all probably experienced that at some point, and it can be a little overwhelming because you can feel that you're this close, right? You're sitting there and you kind of know, man, this woman is into me, right? But you're not quite sure, and you don't want to look like an idiot, especially in a work environment like Mark, and you don't want to say something stupid. You don't want her to be, oh my God, you got the wrong impression, right? Because that a lot of times I always tell guys, that's the fear. The fear isn't like her rejecting you. The fear is just looking really dumb, like her going, like, what? You're like twice my age, Mark. So anyway, she casually drops, we should grab a drink sometime, outside of work. And the minute she says that, right, that's when it happens. That's when Mark went from being this confident, successful surgeon that she was trying to figure out to the classic nice guy, practically tripping over himself to show her what a gentleman he could be. I mean, he got her number and then he literally texted her right after lunch to tell her what a great time he had. Now he's planning this elaborate evening at some fancy wine bar because he wants to show her that he's sophisticated. He's bubbling over, telling her how mature she is for her age, how different she is from other younger women. And this is what I call the validation trap. So the validation trap is something that I see happen all the time, and not just with Mark, but with almost every guy that I coach, young or old. But it's an especially big problem for older guys who start talking to or dating a younger woman. See, what most guys don't realize is that when a younger woman shows interest in an older man, there's usually something specific that attracts her to you. It's that feeling that your attention needs to be earned. Think about it. It's not that most older guys aren't into her. It's that, like Mark, they just assume that she wouldn't be into them, so they wind off accidentally coming across as challenging, especially compared to the dozens of guys her own age who are just begging for her attention and texting her constantly, filling her Instagram with like heart emojis and you're so perfect comments. But you, when you act the way Mark was acting, you're different. You've got this natural masculine restraint. And now part of it is because you're genuinely busy. You've got your life, you've got your responsibilities. And part of it is, like I said, in a lot of cases, you just don't see her as an option. So you don't pay her the same amount of attention that you normally would. So what happens when she starts paying you attention? Well, you go from being the prize to just another guy. You go from being the prize that she's trying to win to just another guy trying to win her. And here's what's fascinating about this. Throughout a woman's life, she's been drawn to men that are a bit older than her. And a lot of guys don't realize this, or they don't connect the dots, but think about it. When she was a freshman in high school, she wasn't interested in the freshman boys. She certainly wasn't interested in like the middle school younger boys. She wanted the seniors' attention. When she was a senior, she didn't want the seniors' attention. She wanted the young gym teacher's attention or the guy who's already away at college, right? That's the guy that she had a crush on. Then when she was in college, there was always that one professor who had half the class, half the women staying after to discuss their papers with him. See, there's something that's hardwired into women that makes them want to earn the attention of a more experienced man. It's not about money, it's not about status. It's about that feeling that his validation means more because it's harder to get. And I see so many guys blow this advantage all the time. So just last month, for instance, I had this client, again, successful business owner in his 50s, and he tells me about this yoga instructor that works with him, and she's in her early 30s. And it's the same pattern, right? She's giving him signs for weeks at the yoga studio that he owns. But in his mind, he thinks, there's no way she's into me. Until she finally makes it obvious by asking him to review her new routine or something after class. And suddenly it clicks in his brain. He's like, okay, just the way she was acting, sometimes you just know, and it clicks. And now he's acting like a teenager with his first crush and texting her about how beautiful her soul is and just telling her how she's wise beyond her years and offering to let her teach more classes because she's just so amazing at it, right? He's just flooding her with validation the minute he sensed that she liked him. And just like that, he went from being the prize, right, the successful studio owner that she was trying to figure out, to just another guy putting her on a pedestal. See, there's a better way to handle this, a way to keep that spark of attraction alive, to make her want to keep proving herself to you while still showing her that you're interested. And that's key. You can't just play it cold and never let her know you're interested, or else you'll get nowhere. But you also can't dump the validation on her immediately. So what I call it is slow validation. And after working with thousands of guys, I've discovered that there are 3 critical elements that make this work. Okay? Let's write them down. So, number 1, reveal your standards. Number 2, go multiple levels deep. Cold read her. So these 3 things, reveal your standards, go multiple levels deep, and cold read her uniqueness, are my formula for slow validation. And let me show you how each of these work. And more importantly, how to use them in a way that has her constantly trying to earn more of your attention. So the first element of slow validation is revealing your standards. But here's what's critical. You're not telling her your standards. You're revealing them naturally through conversation. Let me show you what I mean. So let's go back to Mark the surgeon. Remember how he was trying to impress Amy by planning this elaborate wine bar date? Well, we completely flipped the script. Instead of trying to show her how sophisticated he was, he started casually dropping his standards into the conversations with her. Like when she mentioned loving Grey's Anatomy, instead of just agreeing with her to gain rapport, he talked about how he loved when people are genuinely curious about medicine, how he's always reading medical journals and staying up on the latest techniques, because to him, life is about constantly learning and growing. See, now he's not telling her, you need to be intellectual to date me, right? He's not doing that. But he's revealing what he values, and watch what happens. The next time that he has lunch with her, she starts telling him about this medical podcast that she started listening to. She's asking him questions about different procedures, right? She's trying to live up to that standard that he revealed. See, most guys do this backwards. They try to live up to what they think she wants, when what really hooks her is trying to live up to what you want. So let me give you another quick example. I had this client, Glenn. He was a retired military officer in his mid-40s, and he meets this fitness instructor at his gym. She's 29, and his first instinct was to start telling her how he works out 5 days a week, because he's kind of trying to prove that he can keep up with her, that he's not this old man, right? Instead, what we had him do is we had him casually mention how he values discipline in all areas of life, how he respects people who have a why behind what they do. Not just working out to look good on Instagram, but having deeper reasons for their choices. Well, next thing you know, she's telling him about her morning routine, how she meal preps on Sundays, even showing him her 5-year plan for opening her own studio. She's not just trying to impress him physically anymore. Now she's trying to show him that she has the kind of discipline that he respects. She's trying to live up to the standards that he revealed. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a moment right now and actually write down your standards. What do you genuinely value in a woman beyond just looks? Is it curiosity? Is it ambition? Is it a sense of adventure? Because once you're clear on these, you can start revealing them in conversation, which brings us to the second element of slow validation. And that is go multiple levels deep. Now, going multiple levels deep is where most guys completely mess up their validation. See, most older guys, the moment a younger woman shares anything about herself, right? It doesn't even have to be that interesting, but the moment she shares something, they rush to validate her right away. She mentions that she's a nurse. Wow, that's amazing. That's such an important job. I can't believe you do that. It's, she's into yoga. That's so cool. You must be really disciplined and flexible and whatever, right? But here's the problem. When you validate too quickly, it feels cheap, right? This is why we're talking about slow validation. When you validate her too quickly, it feels like you're just trying to make her like you. Instead, what I teach my clients to do is to dig deeper before giving that validation. So let me show you what I mean. Going back to Mark, the surgeon, and Amy, the nurse, when she mentioned being a nurse, instead of immediately praising her, like most guys would do, like Mark wanted to do, he asked her, what made her choose nursing? So she tells him about how she actually started pre-med, but during her hospital rotations, she realized that she wanted more direct patient contact. That connection with people during their most vulnerable moments is really what drew her to being a nurse. Now, that's when Mark gave her validation, not for just being a nurse, but for having the self-awareness to know what truly fulfilled her. The deeper you go, the more meaningful the validation becomes, right? You want to go multiple levels deep whenever you're validating her, especially when you're dealing with a younger woman, because the surface level validation is going to have no effect on her. See, when you validate someone's surface level choices, it feels like small talk. But when you validate their deeper motivations, it feels like you truly see them. Think about where you are right now. Maybe there's a younger woman in your life who's showing you interest, or maybe you've already experienced that sort of sting of having one slip away because you gave away your validation too quickly. Listen, it's easy for us to mess this up. We get so excited that she's interested that we start treating every little thing she does or says as amazing because it's our way of kind of like just gaining rapport with her and being non-threatening and getting her to like us. And again, when I was working with Glenn, he was telling me about the spin instructor that he's been talking to, and he says, Bobby, I think I messed up. Now, I had taught him the concept of validation, and he was so eager to use it that he tried to shoehorn it in. She mentioned that she loved to travel, and he immediately jumps in with, that's so amazing, I love adventurous women, where have you been? But you can see it in her face that his validation really didn't mean much because he gave it away so fast. So I asked him, what if instead of validating her for traveling, you got curious about why she travels? So next class, she mentions that she's got this trip coming up to Thailand. And instead of immediately praising her, he asks her what drew her to Southeast Asia specifically. And she starts opening up about how after her mom passed away, she found her mom's old journal. And in this journal, she's reading like her mom's dreams and all this sort of stuff. And her mom had dreamt about visiting temples in Thailand, right? This is like things that you don't get out of somebody unless you're genuinely curious. And that whole experience of her opening up and sharing this with him would never have happened if he had not asked that one simple question. And the minute he realizes this reason for her wanting to go there, now this isn't just a trip about traveling and partying and eating food in Thailand. It's about traveling and connecting with her mother's memory. And that's when Glenn's validation actually meant something, right? When you give the slower validation, it means a lot more, because he wasn't just validating where she was going or how adventurous she was for traveling. He was validating who she was. And this is what I want you to understand. When you're with a younger woman, every interaction is a chance to either strengthen or weaken that challenge that initially attracted her to you in the first place. And this brings us to perhaps the most powerful tool that I'm going to share with you today. Because right now you might be thinking, Bobby, I get it. I need to hold back validation. I need to dig deeper. But what happens when she actually does something that genuinely impresses me? When she shows me that quality that I'm looking for? This is where most guys fall back into old patterns. They get excited and they start directly praising her. You're so different from other girls your age. You're so mature. I love how ambitious you are. But there's a much more powerful way to validate her. And I call it cold reading her uniqueness. And when you do this right, it creates this intense moment of connection where she feels like she's truly seen by you. Not just as a younger woman that you're attracted to, but as someone who's genuinely captured your interest. So let me show you exactly how this works. So remember Mark, our surgeon, after weeks of using the tools that I had talked about with him and I had been teaching him, Amy tells him this story about how she stayed 3 hours after her shift just to comfort this elderly patient who was scared about his upcoming surgery. Now, most guys would jump in with, wow, that's so sweet of you. You're such a caring person, right? Just, not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but again, it's sort of surface level. And it comes across as sort of flattery. But watch how much more powerful it is when you cold read her instead. So instead of just praising her, Mark says to her, you know what I bet about you? I bet that you were that kid who always was bringing home stray animals, weren't you? The one that your parents would have to stop from trying to help every wounded bird or cat, because you've got this innate drive to help things heal. Now watch what's happening here, right? Instead of just telling her that she's a caring or compassionate person, he's painting a picture of who she is at the core, and Amy's face lights up. Mark told me that when he said this to her, he just saw her entire, like, oh my God, you get me, right? Because he's not just validating what she's did, he's validating who she's always been. Again, I bet as a kid you were this type of person, right? He's saying you have this sense about you that you just want to see people heal. He's validating who she is at the core. And this is why cold reading is so powerful. When you directly compliment someone, they can either accept it or reject it. You're so caring. Oh, I just did what anyone would do. But when you cold read them, when you show them that you see something deeper about who they are, they feel understood in a way that's almost impossible to brush off. It's like you're not just noticing their actions, you're seeing the story behind those actions. And for a younger woman especially, having an older, experienced man truly see her this way, it hits very different than surface level validation that she gets from all the other guys, especially guys her own age. See, what you might not realize is that your ability to truly see her this way, to understand her at this deeper level, it's something these younger guys simply can't compete with. You've got decades of experience reading people. A lot of times guys come to me, again, I teach a lot of older guys, and they don't realize that this ability, this sort of experience, this psychology that you pick up without even realizing it half the time, allows you to have insights into people that you might not realize is powerful. To you, you're just like, oh yeah, of course. But to a younger woman who's used to dealing with drunk 28-year-old guys who are like, it's a completely different way of communicating. And it aligns with the sort of things they read in romance novels and the kind of things that they mentally sort of masturbate about. And you're now tapping into that fantasy. You're understanding what makes her tick. You've seen enough of life's experience to recognize patterns, to understand deeper motivations. But here's what happens to so many older guys. They get so caught up in what they think are their disadvantages, the age gap, maybe, the gray hair, not being up to date on like TikTok trends or what music is in style, that they completely miss the power that they actually hold. Think about it. While some 25-year-old guy is messaging her, "You're hot" on Instagram, you're showing her that you see beyond the surface, that you understand parts of herself that she's just starting to figure out herself. And this is why she found you intriguing in the first place. It's why she goes out of her way to talk to you, why she lights up when you walk into the room. But the moment you start doubting this, the moment you think you need to compete with younger guys on their level, that's when you lose this advantage. So let me give you something really practical that you can start using right away. So this is something that I call truism cold reads. So to understand this, you got to understand that there are insights about human nature that most people, especially younger women, already believe about themselves, or they want to believe about themselves. For instance, most women believe they have good intuition about people. You very rarely meet a girl who doesn't think she has like really good intuition. So when she tells you about immediately clicking with a new coworker or getting a bad vibe from someone, you might say something like, "You know what I've noticed about you? You've got this ability to just read people's energy. I bet you learned to trust your gut over the years, haven't you?" Or when she shows you something creative that she's done, "I can tell you've got a real artistic side that it has this desire to express itself. I bet even as a kid, you were always like drawing or creating something." See, what's happening here is you're not making wild guesses, you're tapping into beliefs that she already has about herself. But by reflecting these beliefs back to her through your experience and your insight, you're validating something deeper about who she is. Let me give you 3 specific truisms that you can use this week. So, most people believe they're more complex than other people realize. Most women believe they're more independent than their friends. Most people believe that they notice things that other people miss. The key is to wait for the right moment. You don't just throw these out there randomly. Let her show you a glimpse of these qualities, then reflect them back to her in a way that shows you truly see her. And here's why these truisms are really so powerful when you combine them with slow validation. Remember what we talked about at the very start of this video. Most guys mess this up by rushing to validate everything about her. But when you combine these truisms with going multiple levels deep, when you reveal your standards and then cold read her in these moments where she lives up to them, you create this perfect dance of challenge and recognition. You're not just some older guy trying to impress her. You're not drowning her in validation like guys her own age. Instead, you're giving her these moments, these glimpses where she feels truly seen and understood, but she has to earn them. And that's the real secret here. The more she has to earn your validation, the more she appreciates it when it comes. Think about it. Every time you hold back from rushing to validate her, every time you dig deeper instead of just praising her surface level sort of accomplishments, you're showing her that your attention and recognition actually means something, that it has to be earned. And in a world where most guys throw their validation out like, confetti on social media, you become different. You become the guy, the rare guy who actually makes her work for it. And trust me, that's exactly who she's been looking for. Now, like I said, I've got a lot of older guys that I've been working with for a while. So I want to tell you about a live free class I do a couple times a week with my friend Hank, who has also been teaching this stuff longer than I have and extremely, extremely effectively. Hank's 55 years old, and he just has this wealth of information and knowledge. And I actually resort to Hank a lot when I'm working with my clients. I ask him questions, right, to help them out. And Hank's gone very, very under the radar nowadays. He's loving life. He's in his late 50s. He just got married to an awesome 29-year-old. And I got him for the first time in a really long time to do a session with me, and we recorded it. We recorded this entire training that we do. It's called How to Turn Your Age into the Ultimate Advantage with Women, and it's specifically geared towards older guys because we talk about the common tests that a younger woman cut, because we talk about the common tests that a younger woman will give an older man, like asking how old you are or joking about your age difference. I'll show you, and Hank will show you how to pass these tests in a way that make her more attracted to you. How to demonstrate attractive qualities like integrity and quiet power. How to master slow validation. Then we talk about the most important traits that younger women look for in an older man. How to communicate with a younger woman from a position of being the prize, which is actually what she wants. Again, this class is completely free. You can register at a link. I'll put a link below in the description. The class is called How to Turn Your Age into the Ultimate Advantage with Women. And if you're 35, 40, 50, even if you're in your 60s, you're going to find this class invaluable, and I promise your mind is going to expand. So I don't know how long we're keeping this class up, so make sure that you register now. And as always, if you like this video, hit like, leave a comment, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future videos.